Greetings and welcome. My name is Jeff, and this channel is Adventure Guild, a place where I will be sharing tips, tricks, and other ideas that I've picked up along the way on my journey as a professional dungeon master. Today, this video is going to be a little bit more geared towards dungeon masters, but I would really like players to hear this out because this idea would really affect you guys, and I kind of want to get a player's perspective to see if I, as a dungeon master, am barking up the wrong tree here. So let's get right to it. Initiative. In my opinion, D&D has an initiative problem. It should be, and it often is, a very exciting moment when your dungeon master asks you to roll for initiative. Then things slow down. There is the process of making all of the initiative rolls, of putting everyone in order. And what I'm going to talk about today is something a little bit different, though, than just that slowdown, that sort of break with immersion. I'm going to talk about how sometimes the results of initiative don't really represent the lead up to the battle, don't really tell the story that the dungeon master was trying to tell before those initiative rolls were made. And I'm going to talk about two alternate forms of initiative that I have come up with in my games that I sometimes use. The cool thing about these initiatives are they're not exactly alternatives to the normal D&D initiative. They're things you can plug in and use when you think they're appropriate. So, quick story about this first form of initiative I'm going to talk about. I was running a group through the Mountain Toe Gold Mine, which is in the Dragons of Icespire Peak. 5 players and an NPC winding their way through these narrow passageways. Now, the barbarian was at the head of the party. He knew there was going to be some orcs in the door that he was about to kick open. So he did. With flying colors, he made his athletics checks. He forced the door. He moved into the darkness of the room, and there, standing just 10 feet on the other side of the door, 2 orcs, javelins raised, ready for him. Now, neither side was surprised, both startled, but not surprised in game terms. So, normal initiative roll. The orcs in the room roll initiative. The party out in the hallway, single file, rolls for initiative. And so I just get done explaining this exciting scene. The barbarian scans the room. He throws up his shield as the orcs raise their javelin and roll for initiative. And the NPC gets to go first. The NPC, 6th in line, back out in the hallway, 35 feet away. Can't see into the room. Literally would have to move through 5 player characters at 10 feet a pop just to get anywhere. So I declare, I'm watching the back. Next up in the initiative order, some orc that's further back in the room that the character didn't even see, who hasn't even put his shield on yet. So I just describe, okay, there's an orc in the back corner of the room that's, you hear him shouting at the 2 orcs with the javelins raised, who are just there in suspended animation, while this other orc off screen is finishing getting his shield on. Next up was a PC. I think it was a cleric, and he was 4th in the lineup. To get into the room, he would have to spend 30 feet of movement, and then he would have to spend another 5 feet of movement just to get into a square that wasn't occupied by someone else. And so he's just like, so I can get in there, but I won't be able to do anything. Okay, you know what? I cast bless. And my barbarian, meanwhile, he just kicked in the door. He's got his shield up and his battle axe. He's gonna charge these orcs who are still standing there with their spears raised. And then the person 5th in line, I think it was a sorcerer. Can I see anything? Can I see into the room? No. How much movement will it take me to get up there? Well, you gotta move through 4 people, so that's 40 movement. You'd have to dash, and then you could get into the room. Well, I don't want to do that because then I'll dash into the room and then the orcs will just throw their javelins in. So I'm just gonna wait. I'm just gonna wait. Finally, the barbarian got to go. Now, after that happened, it happened two or three more times. I kept seeing this trend, especially in tight, narrow dungeons with corners, with doorways. I kept describing these cool scenes, the classic Dungeons and Dragons dungeon crawl. Open the door, and there's your problem. I kept I kept running into these situations where three or four people who are not even on camera get to go before the person that opened the door, before the thing on the troll that's lurking behind the doorway. He wants to just grab the player character and pull him into the room and shut the door, but four people, five people get to go before he does. Even though, this sort of thing gets in, it, it takes the story and it just robs it of something. So so here's my proposition. I don't really know what to call this yet. I think I kind of call it narrative initiative, point man initiative, in a dungeon crawl situation where you've got one or two players that are up front, narrow doorway, narrow passageway. At the beginning of an encounter, they're the ones who see the bad guy. They're the ones who trigger the trap. They're the ones at round zero. What I do is a special special round. It's a little bit like a surprise round where not everybody gets to go, but it's not based on surprise. It's based on context. It's based on locality. It is letting the characters and creatures that are immediately evolved in the initiating incident that's going to start this encounter. It's letting those guys go first. So what I do, uh, the person that's kicking down the door, usually the person behind him. I like every door kicker should have a wingman, and then the whatever creature is there. Sometimes two or three that are in this that are gonna be like they're gonna be right in the thick of it from the get go. I do a special round where I just roll initiative for those people. The characters out in the hall, monsters off in the background, sitting on their beds, playing cards in the room over, who are going to hear and run in later. No, not in the first round. I make that first round a round between the guy kicking the door down, the buddy behind him, and the few monsters that are right there that are going to immediately see them. And what that does is it creates this short, brutal, exciting round that opens the combat that involves the characters that I was actually describing the scenario to. It involves the monsters that I was actually describing in my description when they kicked that door open. And so this round goes very quick. There's typically only four or five people in it. And then um, once I finish it, then everybody rolls as normal on the second round. Everybody in order. Battle goes from there. It is a really simple, really quick modification that has added a ton of life to my games. Um, you know, now the scenario I described with the barbarian kicking the door in. Now instead of the NPC immediately watching the rear, um, the sorcerer just deciding to wait, the cleric casting bless, which is cool but has nothing to do with like this moment where this barbarian bashes in the door and he's charging two orcs with. Instead of that, doing it again, I would have had the barbarian roll, the ranger who was right behind him, and the two orcs. Four people in the initiative order for round one. Orc number one goes first. Hurls a javelin. You raise your shield just in time. He misses you by 2 points. You feel the impact of his javelin, a satisfying thunk, as you surge forward, bounding across the room. Uh, Ranger up next. The Ranger, right behind the Barbarian. I shoot. Your arrow whizzes over the shoulder of your companion, nearly striking the backside of his shield as it plunges into the orc. 8 points of damage. The orc grimaces. He's actually next up in the initiative line. He was going to throw at the barbarian, but at the last minute, he wings his javelin back towards you. It's a miss. Orc number 2 is now up. He throws his javelin. He aims it down to spike it into the barbarian's knee, but right then the barbarian lunges forward. The javelin clatters against the stone. Obviously, barbarian, you are up. And you know, and your story, your description of what is happening in this battle, the opening description, um, flows right with the initiative with this method. This is not a method I would want to use all the time. Like I said, it really lends itself to tight dungeon crawl spaces. Potential problems with the method is going to be the attitude of your players. With both of these methods, I would, this is kind of stuff to discuss in a session 0. I always tell people in session 0, in my session 0, that if the story, if the setup warrants it, I I sometimes throw initiative out of the window, or I use these methods, and I kind of explain the different methods I use, and that's what you would want to do as a dungeon master. You wouldn't want to spring this on your characters in the middle of a dungeon because they expect things to go a certain way. So this is a good session 0 thing, a good optional rule to bring up, get everybody in on it, make sure they like it, or bring it up if it's something you want to add to your games, bring it up to your players and see how they feel about it. The potential is always like, well, those rounds out in the hallway, that's important because we could do something, and you're gonna, I don't know. To me, I love the narrative and the action of the game. I like making combats active and have great context and really like tell a story, have a flow, have an excitement to them. And so I like the idea that the people that are hanging back um, spend that first round trying to figure out what just happened and to get up there. Of course, there's variants you could do. You could split the difference, but that's the way I do it. So that is something that I call narrative initiative. It could just as easily be called dungeon crawl initiative. If I had a party that was stacked up outside of a pair of double doors in a big area, they kick open the doors and everybody can see in the room and everybody's ready, I wouldn't use this. I would use standard initiative. But again, these tight hallways or these surprise situations where your scout opens the door and he's ahead of the party, or everybody's standing back in case the door explodes, that's where I would use this kind of initiative to make sure that the point man, the person opening the door, is immediately involved in the action of whatever is on the other side of it. Now, the next alternative I'm going to talk about, I'm going to call this the first one is narrative initiative. I'm going to call this I'm going to call this I'm going to call this the standoff initiative. Now picture a tense negotiation between a party of player characters and a guild of thieves. The thief guild master is seated at the table next to his wizard. Across from him, the party rogue who is doing the talking, and his warlock friend. Standing in the same room behind the master of the thieves guild are two mercenary guards, bodyguards, essentially watching his back, and standing behind the party rogue and the party warlock seated at the table are maybe their cleric and their fighter. So you've got four people in a tense negotiation with four other people. No one has any particular reason to think this is going to come to violence, except that sometimes things do. Um, and so the rogue, the party rogue, makes an awesome insight check and sees that this crime boss has foul motives in mind. And so he goes for his wand of magic missiles. Under the table, he tries to wiggle it out of its holster. He is going to unload every charge into this crime boss, a la Han Solo fired first. Now, what would potentially happen in a lot of in a lot of games is the dungeon master would call for just an initiative roll. He's not going to let a player just unload a full wand into this crime boss just because he says he wants to do it. He's going to have everybody roll for initiative because everybody would have a chance of figuring out that a fight was about to happen. He might call for a surprise round. He might have the rogue roll a deception check or a stealth check versus maybe the best insight or the best perception on the opposite side, and the losing side might not get to go in the first round. We'll have a surprise round where whatever side came out on top will get to react. That's that in my opinion is a better way, but I have an even better way that I've come up with. This sort of standoff initiative. Anytime you have a group of people in a tense standoff, um, maybe weapons aren't out yet. This is like picture two groups of gunslingers meeting in the middle of town, and we don't know if this is going to be a fight yet, but everybody's armed and everybody's ready for a fight. Um, what I think is cool is let the person that starts the fight, if someone wants to start a fight, if someone wants to blast off a wand under the table, give them the opportunity to do that, to start the fight. And this is going to be a special first round. Again, much like a surprise round, much like my narrative initiative, where it's just a round between the person that opened the door and the small group of people that immediately are there to respond to that. This is going to be similar, but a little bit different. What you're going to do is you're going to let the person that narratively takes the initiative. If one of your players says, "I cast banishment," or "I unload my wand under the table," or "I draw and throw my dagger at that guy as quick as I can," you're going to let that person roll initiative. You're going to give them advantage. This is kind of optional. You may feel like that's too powerful, but I think if someone takes initiative narratively, give them an advantage to initiative in the game. If they're going for it, if they're drawing first, give them an opportunity to maybe actually draw first. And they might not. That rogue might, despite advantage, he might roll worse than the crime boss. The crime boss sees him wiggling something loose under the table, sees his arm move in an odd fashion as he's trying to get his wand into position. He sees it. He immediately clicks out the poison blade in his boot and kicks at the player under the table, lands an awesome hit. Saving throw versus Constitution saving throw. DC 16, please. You have just been poisoned under the table. And then maybe he goes and blasts the wand off. But the way this works is, to explain it more fully, is you give that player that took the narrative initiative, that said, "I go, I do this, I draw, I run, I tackle him, I pull it, I grab it." Whoever starts the fight, you let them roll initiative, you let them roll advantage. Then you look at what was the die roll, what was their highest die roll without modifiers, or you could just take 10 as a medium number. You could kind of do this either way, but you take that baseline number. I'm just going to say 10. Everybody rolls for initiative now, like a normal round. But anyone whose initiative is under 10 does not get to go in this first standoff round, this kind of modified surprise round. So you have a normal initiative and you step through it. But right when you get to anyone below 9 initiative, the round starts over at a normal round. What this does is this is another way to bring initiative back in line with the narrative. It gives that character that wants to say, "I stab him, I grab it, I jump, I run." It gives them a chance. It gives them a reward for taking narrative initiative, and then it creates this situation where everybody is just sort of shocked, even the people on that person's team, unless if they had a way to communicate it beforehand, if there was a signal. That's a different situation. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about when your buddy makes a move, and he didn't talk to anyone about it first. He saw something, he didn't think to say anything, he couldn't say anything, and he just makes a move. So everybody is potentially shocked, and everybody rolls initiative, but anyone anyone below a 10 in that initiative order, they're just sort of like flat-footed as they see this. They don't get to react, and this sort of what it does, in addition to favoring the what it does in addition to favoring the character that took the narrative initiative, that said, I want to try this, right, that did that quick action, it also tends to favor um, characters with high initiatives to begin with. So the people that you would expect to be a little slow, a little bit flat-footed, will tend to be. And you'll just get this very interesting, unexpected first round where a random assortment of people on both sides react to this initiating action. This drawing of a weapon, trying to put it to the guy's throat, trying to take a hostage. Um, this character who maybe pulls an orb from their necklace of fireballs to toss it into the enemies. Just a select few people will get to react in that round, and then in the next round, initiative moves as normal and it turns into a brawl. So yeah, that's my two things. That's my 2 cents. I've used both of these in games. It's a lot of fun. I want to hear what you guys think about narrative initiative, and also about standoff initiative. I feel like I need to come up with a better name for that, but I want to hear what you guys think. Not just I really want to hear from players, because this is going to potentially ruffle players' feathers. DMs, I think, will love options, but I'm wondering if you as a player feel like this adds to the storytelling, or if it just potentially takes away your initiative and annoys you in the first round of combat. Um, so yeah, I want to hear from you guys all. Um, thank you for listening today, and yeah, um, that's my ideas. So yeah, I will see you guys around.